Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Going Rogue Podcast. Before we get into it, we're going to take a second and thank some of the companies and the people that make this whole thing possible. First up, the Barn Gym. If you guys are anywhere near Caroline County, Virginia, or Ruth or Glen, or feel like making a drive and find yourself somewhere near the 95 Route 1 corridor in the northern part of Central Virginia, stop on by and check out the Barn Gym. It is the only 24-hour strength facility in that area. It has everything you need from Highland Games to strongman to powerlifting to grip sports or just general fitness. You can find them at thebarngymva.com, on Instagram at thebarngymva, a period between every word, or you can email them at ltgthebarngym@gmail.com. That's L as in Lincoln, T as in Tom, G as in George, thebarngym@gmail.com. Check them out. The Lloyd Family Farm Highland Games. Signups are now live on Iron Podium. Go to the filter feature and select Highland Games. You should be able to find it. If not, just search Lloyd Family Farm Highland Games on ironpodium.com, coming up in April of 2024. The one and only Badger Highland Games supply. If you are looking for any and all equipment related to the Highland Games, reach out to Greg Martz. He runs Badger Highland Games Supply. You can find him on Instagram or Facebook by searching Badger Highland Games Supply. He's got a full price list: hammers, weights, sheaf forks, sheaf bags, anything and everything you could need. He's your man. We'd like to take a moment to talk about our other sponsor, ChemStud. ChemStud is an app to help you with chemistry. Written by a high school chemistry teacher who was tired of explaining everything over and over, ChemStud is capable of solving basically any and all general chemistry problem. ChemStud is capable of showing its work using significant figures and is receiving new updates all the time. ChemStud is available on iOS and Android for $4.99 in the App Store. Stop struggling with chemistry and become a ChemStud today. There we go.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
There it is. Doing good, man. How are you?
Doing
Matt,
good.
Hello.
No, it's all good. I've never used this before, so this is actually pretty cool. It's pretty easy.
It's the second time we've ever used it.
Very fancy.
Okay.
And I don't know. It's what two whole people recommended to me when we started this.
That's
and
a
now
lot.
I'm too far in the rabbit hole to do something.
Nice. No, it's very easy for me. So.
Oh,
that's
awesome.
great.
That's good to know.
Yep.
All right. Well, man, welcome to the show. Is there anything you wanted to start off with before we just talking at you?
No, man. This is just a meeting of friends, so let's go. Yeah.
Sweet. Well, then we're going to start off with all the boilerplate stuff and give the people what they want in case they aren't familiar with the sport or with No Fame or with any of that. So,
yeah, sure.
A little about you. Like, how long had you been in the strength sports or Highland Games realm?
And before that, who are you? What's your name?
Yeah. So I don't have to go back. I had to do this with the Danny episode.
Right.
All right. We're going to edit all that out. So
No, it's all good.
So, Josh Mackintosh, right?
Yeah, correct.
It's easy. It rhymes. That's fantastic.
It's a good name.
So,
Thank you.
Who are you and why should people care, Josh?
Thanks. Hi, guys. My name, obviously, Joshua Mackintosh. I I'm one of the people who founded the No Fame Games back in 2021. I have been competing in Highland Games since 2018-ish, the end of the season. Around these parts in New England, we have a Highland Games called Scotland, Connecticut. And it's just show and throw, and that's where I started. But for me, my first, I'm late. I didn't come into Highland Games with a track and field background. I really went to NH Scott or Loon Mountain in, I think it was 2017. And saw the athletic program there run by Bill Crawford, which we can get into later. Bill and Holly Crawford, I should say. And I was just blown away. That was the year that Dan McKim retired. Mm-hmm. And it was just seeing him throw and seeing those guys throw in that era. It was just like, holy shit. I don't know. Can I swear on this?
Yeah. We have an explicit rating, so go nuts.
Oh, okay. So I was like, holy shit, like this is amazing. And the culture around it and strength. And I also was really touched by Stoneland. That really changed my life. in kind of, I would say, activating my Celtic genes, strength genes.
Sure.
It just tapped into something that was so ancient and profound to me, and it just called to me. And I grew up playing sports. I played more volleyball and soccer. I went to high school in Rome, Italy. And so I played a lot of volleyball there and soccer. And so sports had always been, in my life and working out and staying fit. And then when I went to live in Thailand, that I also, just stayed, fitness is there, and Muay Thai and that type of thing. So, but nevertheless, like just seeing NH Scott or seeing Loon Mountain and its majesty in its heyday pre-COVID was really moved me and my family. So that's how I got into it. And then with COVID hit, everyone took a hit, especially throwers, at least around these parts, really lost a lot of festivals, at least for a year or two. And in that moment, a band of us came together and were like, hey, we should really throw a backyarder. Mm-hmm. And we had our threads, and one of the guys called it, why don't we call it No Fame Games? And we were going through lists and names, and that one popped up, and that one stuck, and we really liked it. And that's how it started.
Oh,
very
awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good Lord. That was so much and so little. It went from Rome to Thailand to New Hampshire. That was all over the place. I love it.
Yeah, I am very lucky that my parents were international school teachers. And so I grew up in the Caribbean in St. Croix, and then went to high school in Rome, Italy, and then bounced around. I'm a chef by trade, so I went to culinary school at the CIA, which is the Culinary Institute of America.
Oh, okay.
In Hyde Park. we go to cook in CIA. Yeah, it's funny. They also have the FBI, the Food and Beverage Institute.
Very nice.
So the old school people have a sense of humor. Try to have a sense of humor. Right. And so then I went to tour around Europe. My mother was living in Europe at that time. And so I worked in restaurants all over Europe, and then went back to Thailand and lived there on and off for about 8 or 9 years. And then I came back and was cooking in the New England area. And then it goes to 2017 to NH Scott, and that's how it started.
Awesome. So how many of you guys are responsible for starting No Fame? So like, I know you, but I try to be historian of this sport, but I'm so fucking bad at names.
No, it's all good, man. There was a few people like to hang behind the scenes. But let's see. I would say that it's a group. It was on in and out. It was probably around six or seven guys.
Okay.
And we first started as at the risk of getting ourselves in trouble, we started with just a guy's backyarder, and guys, amateur and masters. And we found a local field. For some reason, I just took it on. I don't know why I was that stupid. But I did, because it's so much work. You guys know. And I took it upon myself, because I'm not a great thrower, and I'm okay with that. Like I enjoy throwing. I love tossing cabers. That's my favorite thing. Okay. But with my background, I don't. I enjoy throwing, but it's not something that I'm not going to be a pro, and I'm totally cool with that. And I think it's also a matter of time and time allocation. Mm-hmm. Given my life. But I do. So in taking that on, I just started contacting the towns and seeing what we can do. And then in going through the whole process of like, okay, insurance, non-insurance, event shored, that's what we started using. And then it just kind of growing organically. After we had the first one and it was a big success, there's a big networking community of people around here in the strength world. There's a lot of great gyms around here, and there's also Cerberus USA has their headquarters in New Hampshire.
Oh yeah.
So our friend, one of the guys, Eric Longley, big shout out to Eric. He connected us with Ken, and Ken was one of our first sponsors. And it just kind of, once we got Cerberus on, it was kind of easier to get other people on, if you know what I mean, just because of what Cerberus is. And Ken's been a great guy, big supporter. Obviously, he's Scottish. And
yeah, pretty lucky to have Ken Nowicki locally as a Scottish guy that runs a strength company.
Totally. No, it's kind of meant to be in that way. And it was easy then at that point. Fraternity of Giants / Girth was alive.
Fraternity of Girth to me.
It is too. Oh, I love that you said that, because it's just the best.
Back when I used to actually make memes, I got a lot of mileage out of him making a company with Girth.
I could only imagine. Oh, your memes are legendary. There's a guy here, Ronnie Romika, who just adores your memes. He adores them, and he would bring them up in games all the time.
That's fantastic.
It was amazing. So that's kind of how that kind of formulated in the beginning. And then since it was a success, we're like, okay, well, if we want to save our necks, we have to have women. And I mean that jokingly, but also lovingly, in that, of course, we're going to have women. It's not a problem at all. So we kind of were like, okay, so how do we do that? And how do we figure out the fields? And I guess I don't want to say marketing, because I don't want to put it into like a system of, okay, this is a brand and this is a thing, like a business, even though it has become that. I feel like it's just such, it needs to keep its organic roots, keeps its genuity and authenticity, and also just like down to earthness. That's kind of, and again, it's no fame games. Like, who knows about the Highland Games? Not many people, aside from people who are in it, and maybe they'll say, oh yeah, I used to watch that on TV, watch the caber toss, right? Or the pole toss, whatever they call it. And I think that was that bringing that kind of just humility outside the limelight, like, let's just go forget about the trophies, and even in a way, the numbers, and just go out and have fun with friends and bring it back to how it was. Because I feel, and how I was told anyway, is that in this area, it started to become more of like the trophies and the numbers, and which is natural, I suppose, a natural progression. But it was more like, because of when COVID hit, then it was like, okay, let's just revisit what it is that we're doing here and bring it back to its roots, and really go into why are we doing this, and that's really how No Fame came about. It was really, like, I guess you call it grassroots, but I think it was more just out of necessity as well, given the state of the world, and also just us wanting to go throw and have fun with our friends. And then we noticed the lack of social media presence and videos and reels. The reels started coming out, and Instagram, and we were like, yo, this is something that's missing, and it's a way to make it fun and intriguing and interesting using music and some video footage. And we really got, the slow-mo thing became our thing, and that's how that started.
Yeah, no, that's it, on point. I feel like whenever I think of you or No Fame or Backyard, like it feels like that whole post-COVID world, everyone did kind of want to get back to the reason why they started throwing. So it was unfortunate that COVID ended so many cool traditional games, but I did really love seeing what came out of it. Like, everyone went back to what they wanted to get out of the games, and I enjoyed the fact that we had a couple of organizations that tried to kind of step up and do it that way, and give the people what they had been missing out on, because everyone kind of realized they're not missing out on the pipe band. They're not missing out on any of that. We're all athletes. We miss hanging out with other athletes and throwing.
Yeah. Totally agree. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you mentioned the pipe bands and things, and you're right. It's true. Obviously, as throwers, we love to throw and love to be around our people. And at the same time, there is this majesty or this amazingness with the pipes and the dancing around. And at least for me, I don't want to speak for other people. And that really, maybe it's also because of my genes, I don't know, that I feel a connection to that. And even hearing the bagpipes in my head after a game for hours after.
A little Pavlovian at a certain
Yeah. Oh, man, totally. So I agree, and I really feel that there's room for both. There's room for both the festivals and the backyarders. And again, around here, there are some backyarders, thanks to people like there's Robert Sims, who's an old school local yokel dude, and it's usually around May, and he tries to get it on May the 4th. So he's he's like, May the 4th be with you, kind of like that's his games kind of thing. He loves that. Very smart man, and anyway, so that we're lucky for that. But also with the festivals, I don't know, how was it like with you guys? Did you lose festivals? What was that like?
Yeah. So I mean, we lost the Richmond games we didn't get it back till this year.
Wow.
That one went away for over 2 years. Green Hill tried to make a comeback, but then it ultimately couldn't pull off either the space or the funding through the city or something. So that one was gone. Radford was gone for a year or two. I'm horrible with time, but it was at least 1 year.
Yeah.
And then we kind of had a weird year back where it wasn't a full, like it was very odd. Sedalia, did VSG go away for a year?
Our pro class went away.
The pro class went away.
Yeah, all of our pro classes went away locally. They've come back now, but
so we lost a good bit just in Virginia, and I mean, typically most of us will go out of state for a good handful of games throughout the year anyway. Yeah. So it was like a straight year and a half where I just didn't throw it a game. Yeah, I mean it was
it's crazy.
Weird.
Yeah, that is weird. Yeah,
I didn't like it.
No, I mean for real though, but I feel it's important. Anyway, it's important to talk about it, and it also goes back to Loon, which we can talk about later.
Yeah, we can get into it. I'm trying to unpack everything like bit by bit, because like you talked about trying to work the women's class in. For people that don't know, it's not about we do or don't want women. It's that every class you add adds exponentially more work, and then more funding, and then more judges, and you start trying to run a bigger game, and it catches up to you fast.
Very fast. Yeah.
And like Danny was saying yesterday, the funding that comes for these games, some sponsors will just say, this is for the master's class. That's what I want to sponsor.
Yeah. I wish we were that organized around here.
Exactly. Me too. Yeah. So it's just because the AD is providing a class doesn't mean that they necessarily even wanted to. It's that to keep a festival alive sometimes, or to be able to offer any classes. When we have these people that are charitable with their money, we're going to run those classes.
Yeah, if someone's got $3,000 and say, I want this,
a master's class,
you can't say, no, I'm not going to put on that completely viable class.
Yeah. And it
doesn't work that way.
And it's not choosing masters over women. It's not setting I think a lot of people look at that and say, oh, they care about this class more than that class, or so and so. And it's like, well, no, this is just what we had money for.
I understand that it's from their perception. They see a game that says, I have money, I'm putting on this, when they didn't realize what went into getting that money at all. And that sometimes it came with someone saying it's because they want X, Y, and Z,
Yeah, absolutely. I have a lot of respect for Danny Webster and what he's doing in the South. It's really, and he's really pushing, obviously there are some sponsors and backers that he has cultivated and that are behind the scenes there, which allow it to happen. Yeah. However, what he's doing is really fantastic. And this new idea, the open, wow, what a cool idea. I mean, I don't know if it'll work or not. I really hope it does, but him being the test pilot for it, perfect.
Yeah. And he hasn't had a bad idea yet with the games. It seems like everything he comes up with has worked out well. And I don't see this one not working well. Your episode will come out after his. We actually released his this morning.
Awesome.
And what he's talking about is running, his end goal is 3 games like this a year. And I think that's entirely reasonable. If you just give people a spring, a summer, and a fall open game where they could try and go make some money, it's something different. It's something fun that no one else is doing on this side of the planet for some reason. Yeah. And I like having that diversity in there. I
totally agree.
I discussed it with Danny yesterday, and for some reason we had all the downsides of, we talked about a little bit powerlifting, where we had 1,000 different federations, but for some reason everyone was doing the same old thing. Right. So we had none of the upside, and it's kind of nice in this post-COVID world that we at least have some people coming out and doing things a little bit differently. So now when I choose to go take business to a different organization, at least I'm getting something different. If I like the way someone's putting on a game, I can just go to their place and do a game there. You know, you can pick and choose.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Matt, did you get a chance to talk with Danny much when you were in Maine?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's just like, the way he looks at fields and the way he looks at the games and how his mind, obviously he's been a detective for 30 plus years, so he has that mind on him. But he's also a ton of fun and a great dude and really cares about the games, really. And we talk about the women's class, like he has really done a lot for the women's class in the South.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a massive amount of respect for him, and I can't wait for that. And really, after he posted that, we were thinking like, okay, how can we also do something similar maybe in Maine? Because that's when we were asked to take over Maine this year, much earlier in the year, we were like, okay, Maine was basically going to fold, and they weren't going to have any athletics. And the person who had been running it for a decade, Allison, she contacted me and said, hey, would you be interested in taking it over? Otherwise, I don't think they're going to have anybody who can take over the athletics. And we went back and forth because it was like, wow, taking on another games, with pro classes. And because I said, if we're going to do this, we have to do this right. We have to do pro men, pro women. And that's one of the few pro masters games as well.
Oh, yeah.
So Allison said, you do what you want. However, when we got into it, there's a guy named Will Barron. He's one of the, he's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And the Barron family are very well known and respected in the Highland Games world. And with that, Will said, can you guys please keep it as a pro masters? Because there's so few of them. They're like, okay, well. Yeah. So we did, and we invited Danny. And he was one of our invites for Pro Masters. And I think that once we got into that and kind of getting our feet wet this year, which, Matt, thank you so much for coming up. It was really a real pleasure to have you up here, man.
Of course.
And we were like, okay, well, we did well enough, I think, that we can't change the weather, but we did well enough that the games chair and the president are very much, on our side and want to support us, and they're very much into the athletics. And the president of the society that runs Maine, he's from Sirius, which is where the first Highland Games was ever held, and grew up in that games in Scotland. And so he has a lot of love and passion towards the Highland Games and wants it to see it continue for future generations. And they pretty much give us like a open slate to do whatever we would like. And when Danny came out with this, obviously we can't do not that we can't, but going to an open setup with both the men and the women vying for one pot, that I don't know if I want to wait to see how that works out, rather than be the test. Because I think he said it's going to be at the Mississippi Games. It'll be the first open in October.
Now it won't be that way. He has secured enough sponsorships. He actually had people come forward and volunteer. He didn't even go looking for it. So he is now going to run a class with prize money for open men, open women, and masters.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying now. Yes, wow, that's amazing. That's cool.
What you're describing was his original intent. It was, hey, we're going to have the men and the women throw as one big group. And look, whether the woman's 28-pound weight goes further than the men's 56, well, then they took first in terms of prize money. They get the 200,
Yeah.
This is a problem I've actually been thinking about a lot, Josh.
And 12 hours.
And you could absolutely do it actually over the last month as we've been working on the website. But you could absolutely do a men's and women's class together if you fix the way that the NASGA scoring worked. Because with women being scored off of men's world's records, it'll never be even. But if women are scored off of their own records, then you would just do it by total points.
Oh, yeah.
Just like you would do
Run it like
Wilson powerlifting dots, or like you could absolutely do a men versus women's class together. And
the highest point value for the throw
value wins.
I would be interested in doing that at our home games.
I think
do
it.
Yeah.
He said like he's actually got any skin in this game. Do it, Josh.
Yeah, I do.
I'll Venmo you $5 right now.
I think that's fascinating. It just kind of blows my mind in the point system. We can get into that later, which is why I also am super excited about what you guys are doing. And I don't know what's okay to talk about and what's not okay to talk about since your last post, Matt. And but man, I for one am super excited about essentially a new database coming out that you guys are building.
You can ask whatever question you want at this point.
Oh, sweet.
Like the website's up right now. It doesn't have all the features up yet, but it is up and you can sign up for games.
Yeah, and we did a short episode just announcing that.
Mm-hmm. I saw that. I saw you post that.
So that will be coming out very soon. Probably pre your episode, we'll do the one announcing the database. So if you want to talk about a new database coming, we can certainly do that.
I think this is an issue that I have had real issue with for the past while, particularly in becoming an AD. In that,
sucks.
Well, it does, and you know what? At the same time, like, look, I'm an old school cat. You know, I lived in Asia for a long time, and kind of came into manhood there. So, like, my mentality and my thinking is very influenced by old world thought, and I'm a big person of gratitude. And I feel like, look, you know, NASGA has given us a lot for however long it's been. Now that we've come to this era in the world. And where we're at as a sport, as a niche sport, it's outdated is an understatement. So in going into becoming an AD and as NFG, we were like, okay, if we're going to really do this, if we're going to really grow and be something, and which just started to happen naturally on social media, and it, for better or worse, it just became a platform for us to have a voice. And then from there, kind of try to give exposure to things in the community or in the sport that we either wanted to see change with or we really enjoyed and wanted to promote. And one of those things obviously was equality and women's equality. And because I grew up, you know, with very potent female figures, and I married a goddess, so I have like a very strong feminine aspect to my life, and I'm surrounded by it a lot. And that, why I say that is because I do feel, obviously you look at these female athletes and it's just amazing to watch them throw the way they throw, like any good athlete. It's not about a sexist thing. And the reason why I'm saying this is because when we, particularly this year, there's two reasons why. First, I'll say this year with the females, and we really said, okay, pro women's class, and we're talking to Danny and a few other ADs, like, if a pro women's class is happening, we're going to help support the pro women's class, which is what we did this year with, thanks to Phoenix, thanks to Albuquerque, which we got connected with, and then our home games, and then Maine. So we had 4 games where we were supporting the pro women's class. And we were like, okay, this is wonderful. Now, how do we put the scores into NASGA? Oh, we can't. Yeah. There is no pro women's class.
Yeah, they get to be lightweight C.
Yeah. Awesome. Excuse me. And I was like, I went onto that NASGA Facebook group, which is just, you know, wow. And you go in and you
can talk about the NASGA Facebook group in a minute.
Oh my goodness!
Continuing source of amusement for me.
Yeah, I mean, totally, and I'm sure, it's like meme city. You see, I mean, it's just like you don't need to go anywhere else to get good content. It's like, so anyway, I posted, okay, who do I need to talk to add a pro women's class to this? Like, this isn't a hard thing, like, I don't know. I'm not a tech guy, but I don't imagine that adding another class is going to be that big of a deal. And then it's just, you just get bombarded with a whole bunch of shit. And I'm like, guys, this isn't a hard thing. Like, these are women are pro, they got paid, I don't see what the issue is. And so that was one thing that really was like, okay, I remember talking to Hayden. He was, behind the scenes / not behind the scenes, trying to build another database, but I don't think he had the resources, and respects to him. And I understand he has a lot going on. It's a lot. I mean, I can imagine what you guys have gone through, to get this done. Like, that was, so remember like saying to Hayden, like before I knew you guys, like I was like, oh my God, Hayden, please, we really need this. Something needs to change. Something needs to happen. And so I felt that was when I heard you guys were doing this, I, was so excited. I was so grateful and happy. And the other thing, the other issue of what I wanted to say about NASCA is a safety issue. And this became also a thing, which then went on to NASCA Facebook group, is I think our first year we had, let's see, our first real, I would say, pro game.
Mm-hmm.
No, sorry. It was our second pro game in 2022, I think. It was last year. That we had Spencer come, we had Matt Hand, and and then we had Nick McPhee, and then we had in order to make it 4, Bill Waddell, who's a local guy, said he would put his because he's a legend in the area. He's a Masters now, but he was like, hey, you can put my numbers in too, and we'll run it and get paid and all that. It's great. So we did that. We put the scores in, and then when it came time for I need to be careful of legal issues. So when it came time for one of the big games in the United States to decide who's going to go compete for that championship, someone went into the NASCA and removed our game scores from the total rankings, overall rankings.
Yeah.
And I believe it was one of the pro athletes that came to me and was like, "Hey, Josh, why is our pro class not counted in the overall score?" So then, we started to do some detective work, and the fact that someone who was another pro, and this all exploded on NASCA Facebook group. I don't know if you guys remember that or not.
I remember I never got full details, but I remembered someone talking about scores getting removed, and it was a whole debacle.
Yeah, and look, so the whole point was security. And so we went in and we took screenshots of the logins because everything is, you could just see who logs in and who changes scores. So it became very easy detective work to go in and just see who was. And so we saw the pro's name, which was right there on the screenshots. And I immediately contacted him and was like, dude, what the fuck is going on right now? And he's like, oh, I was just doing the bidding of, someone else up in that games. And then I contacted that person and was like, what the fuck is going on with these scores? What can you tell me why they are removed? Because some of those, and it turns out then that they had been doing that to many other games, including many of Danny Webster's games in the South, of which one Danny was a participant in, because someone bailed last minute and he threw pro, which he's a good thrower. But they said, the direct line was saying, oh, well, he's not a good enough pro. And I was like, oh my God, here we go. So now there's a qualification of what makes a pro when you can just get an invite. It's just,
right. That's the whole point of our system, is there isn't.
Right. Exactly.
No one has made a unified book. None of us agreed to that when we signed up. We all have kind of unspoken things, but it's not the rule.
No. So, I mean, this is a whole side tangent we can go on, and I think it's really valid. However, regardless, that someone could go in, that anyone who is logged in, who has an account, can go in and change scores is just, it's like, it was just crazy to me. It was crazy. And
I've never liked it from the athlete side, because I tend to be that guy, and I try to do it politely. But if like more than 2 weeks go by, I'll shoot an AD a DM and go, "Hey, when are the scores going in?" I'm just looking at it because I've gotten to the point where I try and use my scores to get into better amateur games.
Yeah, sure.
It matters to me.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a thrower. He'll know what I'm talking about. So screw it, Dave. I love Dave, and I would say all of this to his face, and I have. And he's like, "Well, you can just go in and put your scores in yourself." And I'm like, "No, I don't want to do that. That feels wrong. It doesn't feel correct for me, not being the person that ran that game, to go and do that. I don't like that it's even a functionality that we can do, because
I totally agree.
There's no checks and balances. There's nothing that makes it feel legitimate.
Nope.
If everyone on this side if we want the sport to be legitimate, for there to be a boundary for pros, then everything has to be legitimate. You can't pick and choose. You can't.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't have.
No. I totally agree with you. I totally agree. For me, it's just ludicrous for you to be able to go in and change your own scores. I understand, like, maybe it's because this is all volunteer, or, people aren't getting paid for this, or, so it's just like, okay, keep it open, and who cares? Like, it's just throwing rocks. Like, I can see that kind of side to it.
Yeah.
But then when it became that this pro went in, removed those scores, and it was also, I know it was a hit because we had Spencer Tyler, and the person, and because of how many people do not like him in the sport, particularly old ADs. Like, I don't care who the AD is. Spencer is one of the GOATs of this era. You can't, it's undeniable to say that. And you could like him or hate him, but that's the sport. He came and he threw over a 90-foot, I think it was a 93-foot lightweight for distance after a full pec tear. I was just, I was just like, this is insanity to watch this, and to say that it's not a valid pro class. Like, I was just like, no, there was other elements here, is what I'm trying to say. And
they threw well. That's a pro class,
right?
The end.
And so anyway, with that happening, then it went on to, I approached, or I did a pretty, I would say, diplomatic post on the Facebook group, the NASCA Facebook group, about it, just saying, hey, let's go, I don't think this is right, and so on and so forth. And then kind of guys in the NFG group just like let the cat out of the bag and just sent the screenshots. And it was just like, and then it kind of this huge uproar. And one of them said, well, that NASCA was just built for this one games, for this very purpose, that's its very purpose. And I was like, okay, so then NASCA is then just a shell or something that is directly for this one big games, we'll say.
One thing, yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that's not cool.
The whole sports database should be run. That doesn't.
Right.
We're in a weird spot with this sport, because you do have people that are so emotionally attached because of the cultural significance, and they've grown up around it and all of that. And I think it leads to this very weird mixture of emotions that people have about it, because you have a certain level of who cares, it's rocks in a field, and then you have other people who make it their entire identity, and you have everyone on the between.
Yeah.
And by not rectifying things like NASGA, everyone just kind of, it becomes the Wild West.
It totally is. Yeah, you're right. So, which is why we really needed what you guys have built, and thank you very much for building it. It is very important. It's very, and it's going to make, from what you guys have said, kind of similar in the line of Iron Podium, and making it that user friendly for ADs and people like myself. Like, it makes, I hated going into NASCA to put numbers into NASCA, and then 20, and then having to log out after 15 minutes and log back in, because otherwise it would crash and I would lose all my work. Like, I understand that it's an old system and all that, and I have great gratitude for what it's done. However, what you guys have done, I thank you very much. It's a huge effort, and it's really needed to move the sport forward.
Well, we're hoping it takes. There's no reason why it shouldn't. I mean, having a unified spot where you can do everything, do your sign up for the game, put your scores in for the game, sell stuff, do this, do that, do everything you want to do for the games in one spot.
That's pretty awesome. That's awesome, guys. Yeah. I do have so this will be kind of a controversial thing, which we can then lead into.
So yeah, have at it.
So how does it then go? So let's say that you have some athletes that you are not allowing on the field, and they want to register. How would that work on your end? Would it be an easy just click off? They are, refunded, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, so the couple of things. One, we can set up a filter where just only people that, like, we can set up a ban list if you want. That's really easy. That's something we can do in like 15 minutes. So like, that every AD could just have, and their games just wouldn't be registerable, so you can do like that.
through the affiliate label, because you
got a lot of options.
Yeah, there's ways to skin a cat.
So, so you could either have a pre-done ban list for athletes, or you could just click them off and refund their money and just flag them as athletes.
Yeah, one thing I will say, because this has become an issue with no NFG, and what we're at is people have given us some issue with needing, because we have had to quote unquote ban. I don't like the word ban in the sense that it's like a forever thing.
Sure,
maybe not, but because of what's happened, I don't know how you guys feel with this and your games in the South, but if let's just say, for example, you are approached by athletes. Let's say you had posted that you're going to work with certain athletes and collab with them and kind of just for the health of the Highland Games. And who knows, we just through social media, we really don't know people's lives. We just without having met them. And then multiple people come forward with evidence and screenshots and emails and all that stuff of let's say very bad behavior, sexual harassment, assault, bullying, and so given having received all of this information and then needing to make a decision with your own games to say, is this person going to be allowed into our games? We at NFG made a communal decision that this person broke our code of conduct, and we are not allowing them in. And I know that there's all kinds of characters in the Highland Games. I know that. Yeah. Regardless, when people come forward and bring it out into the open, privately to us, then I feel, and this is where it becomes like where you run games, you have a very different outlook than just being an athlete, because you have to look out for the safety of the entire field and everyone in the field. And look, I know that there's, people are going to get offended. People are going to say stuff. It's kind of old meets new worlds and all that. But when it comes to safety and issues like that, like I don't wish people ill. I wish that this didn't happen. I wish that this person didn't do these things, so we could all come together and have fun and play. But then at the same time, that person's some issues came out with the whole dynamics, which we don't really need to get into. And the reason why I say with the quote unquote ban is with things like the database that you're building, you can put in filters to say, okay, that person just either won't be able to apply or whatever, or they have an automatic refund, or I don't know. I actually don't know what the best way to go about that would be, which is going to be a question for you guys and how you feel about issues like this in our community, because they are very real issues. And sadly, we at NFG have had to deal with, because people are like, oh, this is defamation, or this is, and like, look, it's just so crazy. People are so crazy. Sure. And how do you, what issues do you find that are maybe like this with bans, or or potential issues with the database, and what things are you looking at to mitigate damage in?
Matt has been taking point on the database, so I'm gonna let him kind of address it from that side, and then I'll just fill in gaps at the end. But I think we both look at a lot of it very similarly, so I'll let him.
Yeah, so there are a couple of things that you have to touch on with this, and the first one is, as we're talking about people within our sports, like, you can love someone and wish the best for someone and also choose not to be associated with them, right?
Yeah.
Completely, that's fine. You know what I mean? Like, on top of that, we haven't ran into this personally in the Highland Games yet. There are people that I have disagreements with, but I wouldn't have a problem being on my field. But for strongman, I run 5 or 6 strongman comps a year, arm wrestling comps, blah, blah, blah. I own a gym. That's what we do. I'm a professional athletic director.
Right.
And like, there are people that I've just said, no, like, you cannot sign up for our games. You cannot compete in our competitions. You're either, like, some of them were dangerous on field, or not listening to our refs, or breaking rules, or just plain toxic. Like, and at the end of the day, we're providing a service, and you can deny people services for anything other than,
Thank you very much. Say that louder for the people in the back.
Right. It's as much as we don't want it to be a business, it's a business, and
Yeah.
that's it. You know, like that's at the end of the day, if it's not financially viable, and if it's not repeatable, it doesn't exist anymore. So like, and as the person running these things, you at the end of the day have the onus to make the decision. You know, it's all on you. You have to protect what you've built, right? Like that's
totally.
So again, like I can feel the way I want to feel about other people disallowing or this or that, or like I think it's wrong for people to not want someone like Spencer Tyler, for example, to compete. I would love for him to come down and throw in our games. Please come kick my ass. Like, you know,
dude, it's incredible. He's a cool dude too. You know, he's an incredible athlete.
Yeah. So, or half the American, however the fuck you want to look at that, it doesn't matter. But like, I also understand if there are a problem with certain individuals and games not wanting them there. I understand the AD saying no, right? So, on both sides of the equation, I've certainly said some negative things and had bad interactions with some pretty big athletic directors where I don't expect an invite to some of these games that, you know, I've called very specific ADs assholes to their faces. Like, I didn't like the way they were doing shit. And, but like, I don't.
But you're allowed to do that, though. I mean,
right.
That's the thing. It's a free country.
Yeah, right. And a lot of it from my side does boil down to safety. I think Matt and I are both people who are okay with confrontation. And if someone, like, to go back to kind of your example, you know, shared, hey, here's some photos or screenshots of misconduct. There are a few that I'm willing to make black and white rules on, and then the rest are going to be case by case basis. Like,
right. Yep.
If you are an ongoing safety problem, if your behavior will make anyone else on the field feel unsafe for being there, then you're not coming. Like, it is what it is. But I also believe in extending a little bit of grace. You know, we've all done stupid things or called ADs assholes.
Sure.
Totally.
At the same time, just because you called a friend of mine a prick doesn't mean I'm not going to let you not throw at the game.
And that's it. There's some. It depends on of course, the level of grievance. There are specific games that in the Highland games, especially, that I just don't get along with. That I know are huge for the sport, and I have the utmost respect for, and I love sharing a field with them, especially in the pro rankings. That I don't like.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you have to go to dinner with them.
Right. It's like that's it. There's no problem. Sharing with people, but like, you know, there are people that I just don't get along with. Now then, if those people were doing something openly ethically wrong, I'm not inviting them to my games.
Well, that's where you just said the level of grievance. I think that's the real main thing here. The main point is that, you know, we can all have disagreements, but when it comes into like really stepping over lines and safety issues and just like multiple certain things, you know, like sexual harassment or, you know, bullying.
That's probably one of those black and white things. If it's risen to that, I'm probably going to tell you, go find somewhere else to throw.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
But I got I had several people after I shared the Crawford sign up form. Asked me my 2 cents on it, and frankly, a couple of them were like, what do you think of Josh banning people from No Fame for it? And I was like, it's his game. If that's the card that he wants to play because that's what he has, you know, control over, he has every right to do so.
Yeah.
Like, if that's how passionately he feels about this issue, that's completely fine. Now, and am I going to ban people from ours? Probably not.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
It's everyone can do whatever they want with whatever they have, as long as it's not ethically wrong. And I don't think it's ethically wrong to say, hey, don't come to my game if you're supporting this game. That's a totally fine line to draw.
Yeah. And this is the best and worst part of the sport is that anyone can host a game. And that's the best and worst part. You can have as much involvement as you want. It's just when people think that their involvement gives them any leeway or control over other people's involvements.
Yes.
Problem. If you're not invited to a game, host your own. Like, isn't that the whole?
I totally agree with that. Agree with that. Yeah.
It's not, especially with how it is for NASGA. Again, the best and worst part. Anyone can be an AD. Like, just start hosting them. That's what we did.
Yeah.
Same here. I'd have no experience ADing, but I just did it.
Right.
As long as you were not showing up and being an asshole to me, Matt, or the venue,
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably not going to kick you out then and there, like unless it's a safety issue.
Right.
That's just where our line is.
I think that's totally. I mean, I'm not asking you guys this question rhetorically either. Like I also want to hear, because out of respect for you guys and what you do, where you're at with it, because going into this loon issue and with the ban, that one, I wanted it to be a statement. I wanted it to have a wow effect. Like I don't wish anyone ill. I don't want to like remove fun or whatever. But the reality though is that loon was an elite game only. So the percentage of the people who were even would throw at loon was very small. It was just like, and what's funny is that everyone has thrown at loon of those elite athletes have all signed the petition. So it's like, okay, that should speak louder than actually what I'm saying with like, okay, no fame is not going to, if you participate in loon in 2024, then don't expect to participate in an NFG in the end of 2024, because it's in September or 2025, just due to timeline. And I wish everyone the best, but because of what's gone down at Loon and being an athletic director myself, and having seen what they did to the Crawfords, and I did a lot of homework, and obviously I'm lucky that I am very close to the Crawfords personally, and to Steve Conway, who through the Crawfords and through Loon, and through this process, I've gotten a lot closer to Steve, or Mr. Conway. And I feel like I have enough information and of people who are directly involved, and of the order of events of tracking all of that, to see why this is such an issue and why it's a really big deal. And I love Loon. I like Loon's one of the reasons, if not the reason, why I got into Highland Games. I want to see Loon succeed. I want to see it, but because of, and again, due to legal issues, because of one particular officer who has taken charge, even though an officer is under the orders of the board, that this officer and the board have decided to take a certain line with the athletics. And look, I understand they weren't able to do one day this year, so they lost $500,000, which is huge. Like, I understand that's a big deal, but from talking directly with the right people, that even though the officer side of Loon is saying that it is a financial issue, we have been approached by sponsors from Loon to say, hey, we don't want this elite athletics to die. We want it to continue. We want to donate more money. How do we do that? Like, so obviously this is not about finances. This is about how the Crawfords were treated. And look, I know Bill is a strong character. Bill is a commentator for the Arnold Classic and involved in the Rogue Invitational. You don't just become that. Like, you have to be somebody and have a network in order to get there. So like Bill, Mr. Crawford, or Dr. Crawford, I should say, his network is just insane. And the other issue is that it's not just Bill who runs Loon. It's just as much, if not, some people would say even a little bit more, Holly, his wife. And they're this tag team duo that is like, has made Loon what it is for 20 years. Like, I've seen pictures of their twins in Holly's, Holly pregnant with them in her womb, and her doing stuff for Loon. Like, that's how old they go back to Loon, and how much they've cultivated and developed for decades, man. Like, at sacrificing everything to make that happen, to make it what it is, and paying out of their own pocket too. Yep. Like, it's not like they just were like, okay, give me more. No, it wasn't like that. Like when Thor came, I was there when Thor came. The Mountain came to NH Scott, and the lines, like, it was just crazy. Like, it's so smart how they would put all these pieces together, and to see that go away And to see Loon as one of the most premier games in the world, even it was Scottish standards. Like the Stone Man, who's a close friend of theirs, who has become a close friend of myself as well, he has said like Loon is one of the greatest games and he's been, because he used to do tug of war. He was on a tug of war team, and he traveled all around Scotland, all the different games. And he's like, Loon is up there as one of the best games in the world. And that's, I mean, I'm an enthusiast. I love like seeing you guys throw. It's amazing, and being somewhat of an athlete myself, or I should say competitor, I have a greater appreciation for what it takes to throw a 56-pound weight 40 plus feet, or a 28 80 plus feet, or whatever, the 56, a 17-foot wob. Like, it's just insane. So how they were treated and how they were essentially forced out, like that's not just an issue of loyalty and support of the Crawfords. That's an issue for the entire Highland Games community, in my mind. And look, I'm not going to impose this on anybody else, but this is my stance. And a business can choose to support a product or not support a product. That's you may not like Bud Light, after their marketing campaigns, just to give a controversial issue, so people can choose to support what they want to support or not. Or like another example, Liquid Death, that are also one of our sponsors. Right. Like a lot of people don't like them because of how like genius their marketing is, and quote unquote satanic. Like, it's, people can choose to support things or not, and they do that all the time. Like they support products or not all the time. Like, this is just a way to increase awareness around this issue, to say, hey, I don't agree with this. And hey, look, you go throw, and then 2025 goes by, like, what, you're going to miss our home games and maybe a main games. Cool, man. There's like 15 other games, in the greater New England area. Like, just go do it.
That's what people could do. Instead of getting upset with you for saying, why is he doing this? They could say, I don't like what he's doing, and they could not throw no fame games. It's the flip side to every coin, and it's
totally
within everyone's control. They can vote with their feet and make whatever decision they want to make. I mean, I've tried to put in every post I've made about it, that for them to just go read up about it and to try.
Totally.
I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know the deeper parts of those issues, because I'll say, hey, this sounds crappy. I've signed this thing. Go sign it if you want to,
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you guys posting it. It made a difference, it made a difference. So
losing Loon does pose kind of a problem for, like, personally, and for people that are trying to make the gap or the jump to the pro class.
Yeah. I mean, Loon was a bucket list game for me as a man,
See, that's that case in point right there. Case in point what you guys are saying right now.
There are 4 games that I was told you got to win one of them, but it's better if you win all of them before you go pro. And those games were Dublin, Ohio, right?
Okay.
The East Coast Championships in Virginia, Green Hill in Virginia, and Loon, right?
Yeah. Yep.
The guys that win those as amateurs go pro, if not immediately, the next year.
Mm-hmm.
I'd made the rounds, and I won 2 of those.
Yeah.
I worked really hard to, get up to Maine and throw in your game so I could get that invite to Loon.
Yeah.
And then I ended up going pro the week before. So right. So I didn't get to do ECCs because that was the same comp I went pro at. And the AD said, hey, you're probably going to win. You want to just go pro instead? And I was like, yeah, sure. So
that's cool. That's cool, man.
But, like, that was one of the big stepping stone games where it's like, if you feel like you belong in this class, what games have you won?
Yeah.
You know, without it becomes if you are one of those amateurs like Tony Trapanese or Jordan Patty that are in the 69 to 7,200 point range, that is in the makings of being a pro, it's like, what games do I do now? Green Hill's gone. The Loon is falling apart.
And there was just something cool. I had never been to Loon, but there was something cool about looking at it. You really have a skill about it. I'm very much from the athlete side, a purist. I don't have the cultural investment that a lot of people have, and I'm not shy about that. I'm here to be a good athlete. That's what I want to try and do. but there was just something about watching Loon and just the awesome setup and the whole vibe that it had that really drew you into it. Like it seemed awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
It is. It's special. Special.
Yeah. And for me, again, making the switch from strongman to Highland, I had a track and field background, but making the switch from strongman to Highland Games, like I remember when I qualified for the Arnold's, the comp that I won at, had a block press, and I was looking up like, how the hell do I do like press a fucking
Yeah.
came up at Loon doing the block press
and did 400 and some ungodly pounds,
387, but it is what it is. Like, and so
it
did almost 400 pounds, and I was like, oh, there's Thor, a strongman, doing Highland Games. What is this?
Yeah.
And like, it was one of those things where it's like, oh, this sport has all the things I like in strongman. It has the stones and the carries and the throws, and I don't have to do any of the dumb shit I don't like. I want to do this sport. Like, how do I get to that comp?
And to briefly revisit something Josh said earlier, that's a matter of getting eyes on it.
Right.
Like no one's capitalizing on Instagram reels or any of that side of just getting people to watch it. I mean, that's ultimately what helps grow it, is getting eyes on it.
That was the whole basis of why we put NFG on social media.
Which I'd say NFG is probably doing it better than any other games organization out there right now.
Thank you. That's a big compliment. Thank you.
It really is. It's like if you had to put everybody into a category, you guys would probably, in my mind, be at the top of the social media marketing side.
I don't see videos for anyone else.
No, it's stuff that'll come across anyone's Explore feed because it just looks so cool.
Right.
I've tried to take videos and photos of myself throwing. They look, and part of it is ugly, but the other part
I feel your pain, Jeremy. I feel your pain, man.
I wish I was better at editing because I could offset that.
There are a couple of organizations that are putting out stuff for throwers, right? Like SAAA puts out a pro tip too, something like that. And there are a couple of things like that. But one of the things that you guys do well is, like, I've had guys in the gym come up to me and be like, hey, I just saw you put a stone on your shoulder at a comp in Maine. What is...
it's not even the throw.
Right.
And it looked cooler than any video I've ever thrown.
It's like, and we're running a strongman gym. Everyone's doing the same stuff. And it's like, hey, I saw you do this in a field with a bunch of people cheering. How do I do that? And it's like, oh, wow. Like, the local community for strongman is seeing Highland Game stuff and saying, oh, how do I get into that? So
thank you. That makes me really happy to hear that.
I did want to go through this podcast without at least saying that. We can get back to the controversial shit.
Yeah.
I did.
I mean, I think it's all related, It's all related.
Yeah, if I say something No Fame is doing differently that like sets it apart is that side of it. It's the cool designs on the shirts and the cool themes and the social media presence, and there's a divisiveness that comes with all of it, right? Like you
for sure.
Yeah. And some people aren't going to like it, especially in a sport that we have to share the field with the dog herding demos, and we have to have the Bonnie Knees contest.
Yeah.
Probably what Instagram is, much less know what a good one is. But it's got to be done.
I feel like it. I mean, obviously, I'm biased, but I try to take, what's traditional and what's modern, and then say, look, there is a demographic of humanity that, like you said, you're not really into the cultural aspect of it. And that's fine. Like, you don't have to be, that obviously. And so how do we then say, moving forward, like, for example, with track and field people, with the demographic of track and field athletes, how do you get them into Highland Games?
Yeah.
And so if it's not through bagpipes and Bonnie Knee contests, it's got to be through some badass fucking reels that are going to draw people in to say, holy shit, what is this thing? And so I feel like in the beginning, it was just like the slow-mo, like using the tempo of or a timing of a song that just perked my ear. And then of putting that into when the beat drop of having the release and into slow-mo on a reel. And that's kind of became our hallmark. And then the more I did it, the more I was like, we really need better footage. Like this has so much potential and it's so much fun. And like, it's also really cool to highlight athletes. It's cool to highlight people who are you guys are putting in so much effort behind the scenes for this one moment that we're getting on camera of you throwing this, like all your training, all of the reps, all of that stuff is leading to this throw right here. And it's so I see all of these interconnected parts, and I was like, okay, who out here in social media landia has, some good photography? And so that's how I found Cassie, and Cassie Montag in the Northwest. I don't know if she's in I think she's in Washington. Sorry, Cassie. Anyway, so I was like, hey, Cassie, do you want to work together? And I will try to find sponsors, or just, try to work it out so that you can come, we'll pay you, and you can shoot some footage. And she was more of a still photographer with the games. And I was like, hey, Cassie, what about video? What's the issue? And she took a leap, and she's like, all right, I'll try it. We had 2 photographers come out for home games this year. And one was from Michigan, and Karina, she was great. She has her own style, still photography based, but she has a lot of experience with like official strongman games. And she actually contacted us. She was like, hey, do you guys need an extra photographer? And so we ran for this year was our first year of running the Highlander, and which I love, and we can talk about that too. But what I love about the Highlander was I was okay. How do I love bringing people together as much as like I'm known for banning. I really love bringing people together, the right people together, and having fun, having a party. Like I'm a professional chef to billionaires. Like there's a lot of partying that goes on, and there's a lot of like organization around a party and how to throw a party. So I love like bringing those people together. Bringing people together. And so I found like, okay, how do I, with a Highlander, there is a gap between more strong men and track and field. And it's okay, how do we bridge all these things together? Ooh, the Highlander is a pretty amazing thing. Yeah. What if we did, track and field meets more strongman in the Highlander and bring that? Because you guys have that in the South. We don't have that up in the Northeast. Yeah. Even though the Crawfords used to do it back in the day. And which is why Loon has the Loon stone carries and the block press. Like that's because of the Crawfords. Otherwise we don't have that. And so I was like, okay, Team Highlander, let's do this. I'm going to ask teams from the biggest barbell clubs in the New England area, these are big, there's pro strongmen, and they're not like nobodies. So they all came together. They had a blast. It was not sanctioned by anything, which they actually enjoyed. And it was just like come together for bragging rights. And we made one of the people who started, the person who started the athletic program at Loon is a man named John Lundstrom and his wife, Sue Lundstrom. And he passed away a little while ago, over 10 years ago. And so in a series of serendipitous events, I ended up at his estate sale and was asked to salvage most of his memorabilia and trophies and just like historic artifacts of the Highland Games. And so I have some of his old trophies from the 80s. And so we made one of those old school trophies into the Lundstrom Highlander Traveling Trophy. And so for the Team Highlander. So that's why next year we really want to push that as well. And so Karina was the one who had that. She took care of the Team Highlander as a photography, and which there's some amazing shots. And then for everything else, particularly the pro classes, because we had a huge pro men and women's class at home games this year, we had Cassie. And so a lot of the video footage you saw from that home games is because of Cassie. And then I saw Cassie's work, and then Maine, I talked to Maine, was like, hey, we need to talk about having Cassie over from Maine. So then Shari and Jimmy, Shari is the games chair, and Jimmy, her husband, is the president, were like, yeah, her work is amazing. Because Shari actually is a professional photographer as well. So that was an easy bridge. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I'll see all these moving parts. Now we got to get Cassie over. And that's why the footage of Maine is amazing. And she brought her husband, Clint, too. Like they had the drone and they had the shots. It was just, it just works, like it's a lot of work, but it's not really hard. Like all these pieces can come together. And I think, I don't want to impose, what I think should happen on other ADs, but like I'm a nobody in the Highland Games world. Like, I just fell into this and I just started doing it. I just started doing things based on my background and what have you, and was like, okay, these pieces need to come together. Like, if I can do this, any other AD can do this. It's just a matter of, okay, yeah, there needs to be finances and sponsors, but that also just comes with networking and asking people. Like, I've done so many cold calls and been told no so many like much more than I've been told yes.
Yeah.
So like there is this element of all these things. If you really care, and I know most people do, like they wouldn't do this. Like, I'm not getting paid. I'm spending money to do this.
No, and these are all things that we all as athletes knew were really cool. Someone just had to figure out, show it to everyone else.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, because it's a lot of time and effort to edit the reels. But I feel like that's where we can, because you can be in bed with your phone and be watching like guys like you throw weights that are just like, unless you've done it yourself, it's just like unfathomable what it's like to throw these weights, or even a caber, like a good hunky caber is like, it's not an easy thing. So that's why I felt like, okay, well, social media is such a hellhole in so many ways, but how can we use it for its best benefit with what we're doing?
Absolutely. Sweet. So before we wrap up, if we've already talked about Loon, we've already talked about banning people, so we should talk about the Arnold. Just if we're gonna ruffle feathers throughout,
sure.
Why not now?
Sure.
Hey, look, between your games and our game, we could stay busy for most of a year. It's fine.
For sure.
So, but yeah, so again, this is another one of those things where I don't claim to be that knowledgeable about everything that happened, but what I do know is the Arnold doesn't have Highland Games anymore, and that sucks.
Correct.
Because if Loon was the cool X factor from the cultural side that really made you feel invested in the heart of the Highland Games, the Arnold was the sports side. I mean,
absolutely.
If you want to talk about the pinnacle of the athletic side of it, having the Highland Games at the Arnold was tops. I mean, that was another one of my, hey, I want to do this as an AM within the next 2 years, before I consider jumping up. Like, the Arnold was one of those games, like,
absolutely, as it should be.
And now that's not an option. Like,
Correct.
That's not even I'm not going to go unless. That's it doesn't fucking exist anymore.
Correct. Yeah, so, it's an atrocity.
Yeah. So, hey, pretend this is the Facebook group. The floor is yours. What do you want to say about us losing the Arnold?
Yeah, I was pretty adamant on my feelings around that, and this is coming again. Like, I know that people sacrifice so much time and energy and effort, and my post was not towards those people who have put in the hour, like the groundwork, like the people running it and like sacrificing, who have a really good heart and intention of why they're doing it. Like, thank you to those people who have done it for however many years they've been doing it and running it and making it happen. Thank you. From what I was told by people who I'm not going to name because I don't want to start too much shit, is just people who are very much in the know, who are very much associated, said that this is an issue of management and of pissing off not just Arnold Festival itself, but Rogue as a sponsor. And why? And because of egos. Like, long story short, it's because of egos and thinking that they own the show and thinking that they are going to run it this way. And like, look, it's the same principle for me as Loon. Like, this is the fucking Arnold, expo, man. This is the one of the biggest ways to expose our sport to the entire world, if not at least nation, if not world. And so why it should be the elite of the elite. It shouldn't just be anyone in any class at anything just because they feel they want to throw at the Arnold. Like, it should be an invite only. This is my opinion, right? So I understand everyone wants to throw at the Arnold. Everyone wants to, have that experience, but it's not like that
to get better.
Well, that's, and look, I wouldn't think that I would be good enough to qualify to throw at the Arnold. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm good enough and I've thrown there. Like, I would have loved to, but the issue is that it's like, this is a way for our sport to be exposed and pushed into modern culture and the strength world in general, like it should be handled with great care and with great, I'd say, wisdom or just like know-how and foresight on what, you know, is how this should be approached and how it should be run, and why are there not a pro class? Like, why is there not the best? Or, you know, there was, and then there was some issues, and then it's like I don't know the people, you know, the Great Lakes, what is it, the GLSAA, yeah. Like, I don't know them personally, and I don't wish them ill, but this was a fuck up. And I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry, not sorry. Like, you losing, because of what I've heard behind the scenes by people directly involved, is that it's you losing this because of your ego, or because of you wanting it to be a certain way and trying to to monetize it a certain way, whereas everyone else in this expo is like, this is the elite of the elite.
Mm-hmm.
And you're pissing off the sponsors and the festival itself. What makes you think that that's okay? And why shouldn't that be called out? Like, if I'm even, in my mind, I'm doing like things that are around justice and are around protecting a community and about exposing and increasing awareness for issues of social justice, whatever you want to call it, or like trying to, that's not a bad thing, I would say. And I'm getting flack for it, and that's fine. Like, this is how it is. But like, and people are calling me out. But then when it comes to losing the biggest games, in one of the biggest games and most important games in our Highland Games community, and then we can't call that out? No. And you know, maybe it's the way that I went about it and being so forceful, and I'll take responsibility for that. But I'm honestly not that sorry about it, because like, this is a big issue. And a lot of big ADs that I talk to, because of who NFG is, you know, and our social media, like, we talk to a lot of people. We talk to a lot of people behind the scenes, and a lot of people contact us and talk to us. And it's not like this is coming out of my ass. Like, this is I didn't make this up. Like, I wish that I made it up. I wish that, you know, this wasn't happening. I wish that this was not true, but it is. And I think that it's a real shame, guys. It really is. Yeah.
For sure. And I think, as far as catching flack, that's one of the things that I've picked up on is people get really emotional about emotional issues, and then they kind of shut you down when you're talking about business because they don't understand. And what happened with the Arnolds is a business problem, right? Like, we're all emotional about a bunch of shit, but what happened was a logistics error, right?
Yep, exactly.
Like, so calling people out for running their business poorly is, as a business owner, what we got to do. Like, that's.
And I know, I hope people would do it to me too, because that's how I grow and be better. Like,
right. I mean, there are gyms in our area that we talk to all the time, other gym owners, you know, for us, it's the weight room and brute strength are the two gyms that we talk to often and care about what they have to say. They've both been in business for 20 years. Like, it's,
wow.
Right. Paragons of strength. One of them's closing, unfortunately.
That's
We're lucky enough to take over a lot of their equipment. But it just becomes like, this is a fuck up. And now, because there's a bad, you know, there's a bad taste in the Arnold Association mouth, it's going to be hard for one of us, which is who it's going to have to be probably, to go in and say, hey, no, you should still let us do this. Here's how we want to do it. Like, there's already going to be this tinge against us and trying to get this program back.
Well, the good news is that that's already underway.
I figured as much.
What's already under? Sorry, I had to step out and parent briefly. What's underway?
Bringing the Arnold back.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So hopefully by 2025. Yeah, by 2025. Hopefully that's the goal.
Oh yeah.
Good.
So we'll see, though. It's really up to the festival. You know, like, you can be, you know, you can have all these connections, and luckily there's people who are very qualified and much better than me, and I just want to be a sous chef, you know, to these guys. I'm like, just put me in, coach. Like, I want to be, I not because of any, like, I don't want control or the power authority. I don't want that. I just want to be better. I want to know how to be better. I want to, like, see how this works by the professionals and by the best in the game and be around that. And I'm not scared of that. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, I have this ego. Again, it's back to ego of like, oh, I either need to be respected or the best, or I need to be in control of this, or I need to whatever. Like, you know, step out of it. This is something that's greater than an individual, that's greater than the ego of an individual. It affects thousands of people, and if not, potentially tens or 100,000s of people by who comes to the Arnold and who takes video there and all that.
You can't name a better way to get eyes on the sport, which I think is something that a lot of, and this is my observation, this is not factual, and this is my best guess, but I feel like we have a lot of people still running things who don't understand the value of just getting eyes on something.
Yeah.
And it's back to the whole, how do you market on social media? I mean, the Arnold is the best way to get eyes. There are thousands of people that walk through that building in that given weekend. And then you're multiplying that exponentially by the number of videos and texts and posts and everything that also then gets made there. Like you can't undervalue that. If you're not giving that its appropriate due, it's not going to work.
No, you guys said it. For the record, I didn't say it, even though I completely agree with you.
That's entirely Jeremy.
Tell me I'm wrong. If you think having eyes on the sport doesn't help everyone, I don't understand what your goal is.
No, I'm 100. It's just so obvious to me. I don't know why this isn't rocket science.
And there's no way to remain stagnant. If you remain stagnant, it will die. You can't keep everything the same. It's NASGA, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can't keep using the same thing. It has become outdated. Either you have to find a way to grow with it or you're going to die. You can't just keep doing the same thing. It's not sustainable. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. I mean, I cannot agree with you guys anymore. And this is the thing, like as an AD or someone, it's not even about the business, even though this is a business. And NFG became a business solely because my wife told me that if you don't turn this into an LLC or something, then it is shutting down because we're not going to lose our house if someone just gets injured and decides to sue you, because it was all on us. So I feel like that's the only reason why we really became an LLC. It wasn't like for financial gain. But at the same time, like when you, as an AD and someone who's now because of social media or whatever, like we've come into this, people recognize NFG, and it's like, okay, well, if we want to be better, like I really care about being better, like the Japanese concept of Kaizen, of like every day pushing the 1% of how do you get better each and every day. Right. And how I was always taught or told in the athletic world or in the chef world is that you go work in a really good kitchen and where you're the worst person in the room. And then you learn you immediately have that osmosis, psychological, and then you just by putting in the grind in that environment, you automatically get better if your mind's in the right place. And so I feel like this is the same thing with the Arnold. Like it should be run by the best of the best, and I want to be the sous chef or whatever involved in that, because then I can bring that back to the home games. I can come bring that back here locally to the main games or to this new games that we're going to develop in New Hampshire if shit doesn't change at Loon, so like there's like, I feel like all this is really important, and people just, it's really sad, the Arnold issue for me, and luckily the right people are stepping up, and hopefully in 2025 things will change.
Yeah. I mean, it is not and again, from an athletic point of view, to not understate what a loss this is. Like, we have guys that should be pro friends of ours that are, Jordan Patty's who I'm talking about. He'll be okay with me saying this. Like, he's turned down a couple of pro invites because he wanted to go and win the Arnolds.
Yeah.
As an amateur, because they didn't have a pro class at the Arnolds. And
right.
He saw it and he's like, this is fucking awesome, and I want to win this. And and so that was.
I want to compete at the Arnold.
Right.
And I don't want to do it in Moss Wrestling. I want to do it in Highland Games.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not again anyway. But
I agree, guys. I agree. It's just the same thing what you said about like, if someone is looking at this from an athletic perspective, that you want to become a pro, and obviously as males, it's easier to say, okay, you go to these games and then this will help you in your pro career, whereas with a female, I think that's still building, obviously.
Sure.
But that being said, though, that the Arnold and Loon were both games where if you won as an amateur, you get a lot of exposure, which is the whole idea of this, the pinnacle. Like that's the whole thing about Loon, is that it is the pinnacle of Highland Games for this entire area. Everyone is trying to vie for a spot to qualify for Loon, because then it's a feather in the cap, one, to even just throw at Loon. But then also, like, if you win or you podium, you have the Crawfords, you have Steve Conway, you have the eyes and ears of pretty much every AD in the country, saying, okay, who's this? And that's what the Crawfords and their team built consciously. And that's why this, and I'm sure it's the same with the Arnold. Like, obviously it's the Arnold, so it's a little easier to say, okay, this has the Arnold vibe. Like, this is a big deal.
Right.
Like, it's easier with the Arnold, but to build it from grassroots with something like Loon, like, that's also why I'm like, wow, that really sucks that the board forced them out. And this is going to go away because of egos. Again, egos. It's like, I don't know, man. This has been a tough year for Island Games.
Right. And it's a big hit to the games overall, but it's a huge hit to the North and the Northeast specifically, right?
Totally.
Like, if Costa Mesa went away, then all the guys around there would be, furious. It would be it'd be rioting. If Pleasanton disappeared.
Seriously, it's the same thing if Pleasanton disappeared. Yeah, exactly. So, or Grandfather Mountain.
Right.
And look, I understand there's some people who are just not in the, like, looking at the sport of Highland Games as, like, I don't want to say a career path, but as something for them to develop themselves in and to find a sense of value and self-worth. Like, so there's these athletes who are train hard and try to get better, and they want to, whether it's go to an amateur championship or become pro, or, go to world masters worlds or whatever it is, like, depending on their age range or whatever, like, so there's that demographic. And then I know that around here too, there's also people who just really don't care. Like, they're like, there's people around here who are like, who cares about the pro class? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, and that is an issue, because part of what happened at Loon too was the management saying, well, what's the difference between a pro class and amateur class? Like, the audience doesn't know. And that for me showed the immediate disconnect that the management has with what's really happening at Loon. Yeah. But that's one thing.
It's a hard gap to bridge, because they're kind of right from the audience perspective. If you took someone who knew nothing about the game, how do you show them the difference?
I think I agree with you. Totally agree with you. At the same time, though, and this was the example that I was told, is that if, for example, around here, there's the Patriots, right? The Pats are huge football. Like, you'll hold season tickets for the Pats, but you won't for your local B team. Why? Because you understand that there is, even if you don't understand football, you understand that there is a level of awe, and it's not just the athletics itself or the athletes themselves and their own skill levels. It's the vibe, right? That you get. Yeah, and how you pitch that, how you commentate on that. It's really, like, there's an art to that, and so yes, you're right. Like, but this is a big issue that I remember talking with Danny about, or other pros about, is that there are these ADs in the country now who are like, well, I can save money by not having a pro class and just have some amateurs, and who knows, the crowd doesn't really care. They just, want to see a caber tossed, or they just want to see a weight. Like, they don't care. That mentality, I will say, is a virus, and it's very dangerous, because for the demographic of people who look to physical culture as a way to develop themselves personally and their character, spiritually, maybe, like, stone lifting is a spiritual thing to a lot of people. It's like, you're removing that to say, oh, just who cares? Just, anybody can throw, and it doesn't really matter. Like, I think that there's a fine balance, again, with egos, to say, like, the people who don't care about the pro class or about, excellence in sports, maybe they're hurt or jealous, or I don't know, maybe there's some psychological issues that are happening there, or just like, or they don't want to put in the work to be better, or they don't care, and they just want to throw and have fun, and that's all fine. But
part of people not knowing, because I'll openly admit, my first 3 years in the sport, I felt that way, just because I also didn't fully understand it.
Right. There's a timeline there. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Like, as I grew and learned more about it, I was like, oh, there is a very definable difference. But for a while, I was definitely like, I can see why people don't understand this. And it was just a matter of education for me and spending more time in it to realize what the difference was. But
yeah,
you don't have athletic directors and venues that are promoting it. There's no way for anyone else to get that amount of time to actually let it soak in and educate them that there's a difference, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Or if you never seen the big difference in caliber of pros.
Right.
Yeah.
But, I mean, my first games I did with Jordan Patty as an amateur. I started as an A thrower. If those classifications mean anything, they just threw me in.
Yeah.
We got grouped in with the pros because of the field size. And so I threw with, Patty, who is now, me and Patty are both 72, 7,300 point athletes. And then it was Wes Kaiser, Jonathan Harding, John Collins, and I don't remember the other pro. Forgive me, but he's not listening anyway. He doesn't care. But
that's a serious class, though. That's a serious
right. And so, getting to watch Wes and John throw. I think Wes threw. I don't think they had the 20-pound sheaf. I think they had a 16, and they were just doing a demo. I think Wes threw like 41 feet.
Yeah. Yep.
And it was like, oh, well,
holy shit,
there it is. Or maybe he threw it afterwards. And he was like, no, man, you got to throw it like this. And he, rips one off over the top of the standard. And it's like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
This is.
Yeah. That's amazing. No, I totally agree. But that's why, in order to have that, to close the gap of the caliber in your mentally and to understand it, you need to have big games like Loon, like the Arnold, like Pleasanton, like Grandfather Mountain. You need to have those around because it shows, it's a meter of measure for what the sport, like the greatness and the power of the sport itself and what it takes in order to throw that. And for an athlete to say, oh, wow, okay, maybe, I throw and I have fun, but like, whoa, there's a whole nother level here. And the same thing is like in cooking. There's people who can just slop food together and that's fine. They have fun and it's, they have a little soul food or whatever. But then when you want to get into like cuisine and refinement and like real flavor combinations and profiling, like there is another level. There's levels to this shit, and it doesn't negate or degrade soul food and hearty, healthy food. It's not, doesn't take away from that, but it's also great. Those two things can live together and be friends and not looking at each other with, feeling like one's better than the other or feeling less than or feeling more. It doesn't, that's all the ego that I hope, it's not going to go away, but it would be nice if it got less.
No, but I like it, to bring it full circle back to like Danny's thing. I like that people are having these conversations and stuff because you need the big pinnacle games where only people get in on merit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I truly love the idea of the open where you only get paid on merit.
Yeah.
I like the honesty of that system a ton. Like if you're going to show up and put your money where your mouth is, if you get your dick kicked in, it's just because you need to be better. And
totally,
there should be some semblance of that to the top tier games in the country. Like you shouldn't get to throw at Loon or the Arnold or Pleasanton as a B level athlete or as a mediocre A level athlete. You should be really good. Yeah. Like that is the point of those. There are other games for you to go throw at and you should. And it's encouraged, and please do.
I totally agree. Yeah. I feel like it's really it's really important to also go help out, to volunteer. Like look at powerlifting. Like you can't just you go have a meet, but then how many of those, you can't run a meet without the volunteers running the weights or even a strongman comp. Like here's the other thing too that is really, at least is really dangerous around here. Like it's hard to find help. Like people just want to show and throw and they don't like whatever. There are very few people that are like, hey, Josh, how do I help with NFG? Like how do I give back? How do I like maybe not throw in a game, maybe sacrifice a game and then become a volunteer and give back? Like that mentality that's also another virus that I hope it's not happening around you guys. But it's definitely difficult up here. Like the Highland Games up here is run off the backs of very few people. And some of those people are getting very old, like Kenny Gustafson, who supplied the equipment to Maine. He supplies equipment to most of the games in New England. And a lot of it's pro bono. Like, he does it for the love of the sport, and we've, paid him. Like we were one of the first people that paid him ever. It was like, it's just like, that is another issue that I hope, you guys can also help increase awareness around, is that we need to also throw, but we also need to volunteer and to give back and to have a sense of value in that. And it's otherwise it's dangerous.
So let me take this one. So there's local high school track teams will absolutely volunteer and get their community hours for their high school to go and watch people throw things and shag weights. And like, you can absolutely, I found this to be such a good thing for our strongman comps is the football team that my high school's football team comes out and helps us with our strongman comps now.
That's awesome.
We're during the Lloyd games.
Yeah, well,
that's awesome.
That's what we're doing for the next one. It's I
could talk to the high schoolers
It's very normal for college kids to need community hours, and for high schoolers to need community hours for whatever they're doing. And it is hard to get the athletes back involved and the people that are in the community, but you can also just build the community through reaching out to people that need service anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree, and that's a great idea. I think though too in New England they're a little rougher to warm up. So I don't know what it's like down in the South more, but yeah, that's a great idea. I hope people take note of that and use that.
Yeah, fantastic. But it's not bad here. It's just I had the impression that it comes in waves. I feel like sometimes you'll put a thing together and you'll have plenty of people come out the woodwork, and then I don't know if it's date dependent or what, but then you'll do another thing and you never hear back from anyone.
Good point. That's true. I do think it is a cultural thing as well around the people. Like, for example, one of the people in the strength world that I look up to, his name's Eric Dawson. He runs Titan Barbell out of in Stoneham. He's someone I just have an immense amount of respect for, and also the culture that he's created at Titan Barbell. And obviously, he's a pro strongman, but he's he loves running games and he loves being connected and helping people, and it's a top-down management thing where whenever he runs a game, there are volunteers, like more than enough volunteers, and obviously he takes care of those volunteers too. Like he's very thoughtful. Yeah, he's from the Midwest, and that's his sense of hospitality and his value system and his character and his lack of ego is really noteworthy. And he's someone that I look up to try and model for what I do for NFG with with creating a culture, because I find, and I'm sure you guys have your own role models too down there. If not, you're becoming them or are them, and that's really important. Is the top down, and again that goes back to Loon, it goes back to Arnold, it goes back to every other game in the nation on how you run your game, and even Danny too, like how it takes a certain person to get out of their own way and to think outside the box for how can I do this either better or differently, and then that excitement also propels and fuels the sport forward as well.
And I loved our conversation with Danny because the man is full of great ideas, and he's putting a ton of work to try and grow the sport and make it better. But he was incredibly humble throughout our entire talk with him. And I think that's really the key to all of it. I mean, he did not have any ego into it. He's doing more than almost anyone in the Southeast region is. I mean,
he is,
bar none. And yet you talk to him and he did nothing the whole time, but thank everyone else that's helped him out and not take full credit for really anything. And it was great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's people like that I hope we look to as leaders, moving forward.
I don't think Matt and I are the most humble people in the world, but we're at least honest. And I'll tell you when I don't know all of something, or I'll try and help you.
Truthful.
Yeah. We're truthful.
Yeah.
We're not humble. We're truthful.
Right. Very
yeah. It's take what you can get.
You guys are great.
Yeah. So
anyway, well, thank you for the talk. Sadly, I'm
you recognize that.
Good.
I'm going to cut this whole episode down to you guys are great.
That's you guys are great. Yeah, thank you for your service.
Yeah. Oh, but I mean, we've checked all the boxes of stuff I felt like we really needed to talk about, man. Is there anything else? Do you want to plug anything else that you guys have going on? Do you want to
let
people
thank you.
find
what's on the... Yeah, for sure. Actually, there are for sure. We have coming up for NFG, we have our home games is going to be right now. It's going to be June 15th, 2024 in Milford, Massachusetts. And that is also going to have the Team Highlander, of which you guys hopefully will still bring a team up from Virginia. That would be really dope.
Really cool, Matt. What's up with that?
I didn't invite Jeremy. It's fine. We'll talk about it later.
Oh, no, sorry. Sorry, Jeremy. Sorry, Matt. But anyway, yes, so that's happening. And then we got Maine, which is always going to be the third weekend in August. And that will be this year, or sorry, 2024 will be open registration with reserve spots. There will be a cap, but there will be reserve spots for people who have won in the past, or top end. So whatever. So there's that. And then again, I really appreciate you guys even just getting me on the podcast here, because it's a great opportunity to talk obviously about NFG, but also what's happened this year. It's been a tumultuous year in many different ways, and a very successful year in other ways. And it's great to just talk, to people about what's happening in our sport and just have a real conversation. So I really appreciate you guys. And obviously, I'm kind of the guy behind the scenes who has had to come out from behind the scenes because of what's happening and what has happened. And I said that I wanted to take, the fire. I don't want other people to have, to be under the fire. I'll take responsibility and, take the fire, I guess, and take the heat. And then protecting other people. But there are a lot of people behind the scenes here that that have made this possible, that have made NFG this. If it is a success, it's made it a success because of the people that are around us, and they all know who they are, and so thank you to them as well. But just if you guys can, I'll be making reels and blasting it for our home games. It's going to be, the jewel in the crown for NFG, and obviously Maine's amazing. And then I'll let you know about this new games in New Hampshire. That's going to be maybe at the end of June, early July. That'll be a new big games coming forward, depending on what goes down at Loon.
Yeah, sounds awesome. Good. I love it, man.
If people who want to find us, it's nofamegames.com. That's one way if you are on the website. We're going to do an overhaul of the website this winter. But obviously on social media, we are on Instagram as nofamegame without the S. That's where you can see a lot of the videos. And then there's also Facebook at NoFameGames, which we don't really spend too much time on there, but the videos automatically upload there too. So
yeah, awesome.
Check it out, y'all.
If anyone here has problems finding it, it's in the link tree on the podcast bio. So if they're listening to the podcast, I assume they know how to at least get to that and can run a loop around it to get to you guys that way.
Awesome. Thanks again, guys. A lot of respect to you. A lot of appreciation.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we'll talk soon.
All right, bye.
All right, bye.
This episode is also brought to you by HeavyAthlete.com. HeavyAthlete.com is a cross-compatible database, meaning you can link all of your historical scores from NASGA to your Heavy Athlete profile, regardless of how your name was ever entered. All of your new scores will automatically update into NASGA going forward as well. We've created a pro women and a lightweight women's class, meaning you can finally see where you rank in your actual class. It's receiving updates all the time and is free to use for athletes and ADs. For more information, go listen to the One Turn NASGA No More, or go to HeavyAthlete.com.